Good afternoon and welcome to the Protective and Emergency Services Committee for January 21st. I'm going to call the meeting to order. I need someone to approve our agenda today. Moved by Councillor Ramsey, seconded by Councillor Duran. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest?
Seeing none?
Not seeing any, great. Someone to approve our previous draft minutes from the 12th of December and the 19th of December.
Sure.
Moved, seconded by Councillor Duran. Is there any business arising from either of those sets of minutes? Not seeing any, that's great. We're gonna move right into reports and discussions, and we'll start with Deputy Fire Chief Kent Mitchell giving us the operational report.
So this is the operational report for the time period December 1st to December 31st, 2024. The purpose is to provide operational response information and fire prevention activities. During this time period, we had eight inspections. Inspections with hazard compliance orders issued were 16. 6 inspections were closed. There were 22 plan reviews, permits and consults, 2 fire investigations, and 5 education sessions. Total number of calls were 93 during that period. 48 from Station 1, 13 Engine 1, and 31 from Station 2, and 1 fire inspector calling. And for the year of 2024, we had a total of 1,004 calls. Regular weekly training paused for December and was started again early in January. Training includes, in this training period, ice rescue training, medical first responder training, and all types of in-house training, as well as Blue Card Incident Command training continues with a new cohort beginning within the next month or two. The department would like to congratulate career firefighter Bobby Chandler and volunteer captain Scott Ryan on being successful candidates for the first career platoon chief positions for the City of Charlottetown Fire Department. Both Bobby and Scott have been invaluable members of the department for many years, demonstrating exceptional dedication, leadership, and service. And we look forward to their continued contributions in their new roles. As well, the Firefighter 2 competition is in progress this week, and we expect it to be completed by the end of this week as well. Firefighter Awards banquet will take place at the PEI Brewing Company on February 22nd, 2025. That concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Your department was certainly active with some pretty intense fires this past month, and I think a lot of appreciation, recognition to the guys and girls who are out there doing that. Is there any questions for Deputy Chief Mitchell? Councillor Ramsey?
You got 1,004 calls. Is that up or down from last year? Can you remember?
It's down slightly from last year, but I don't have the exact number, Councillor Ramsey, but probably 150 calls or so. But this is the 3rd year in a row we've had over 1,000 calls. And I know for sure that within the past 10 years, the calls have pretty much doubled.
Okay,
So
thank you.
that's where we're at.
No, I just didn't know if they're up or down
They're-
from
they're-
previous years.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Duran?
Yeah, just what is Blue Card Incident Command Training?
Councillor Drawn, that is a Pacific incident command training for fire specific activities. Fire tactics, fire control, fire incident management, that type of thing. So
Thank you.
very valuable course.
Any other questions? Thank you, Deputy Chief Mitchell. We'll move on to the second report with Fire Chief Tim Mamie. It indicates the operational capital budget report, but we're going to focus today on the capital budget report.
Yes, thank you, Chair. As everybody has in their package, just the capital expenditure report for 2025-26 as we get into that budget year, closing out 24-25. And the new items required. I'll start at the top for the first one. It says fire station design. That's been on the books for the last 2 years as we contemplate the design of the building and the remaining features that need to be added to it. The estimation there of 2 million in the 25-26 mark is in regards to potential land preparation and or purchase and the start of a build to complete that design. That's the expectation in 25-26 as we move forward. equipment, firefighter turnout gear. We just, fortunately, we were on the call today with the manufacturers of many of the three pieces of the firefighter turnout gear. They're attempting to get PFAS-free gear, and PFAS, I won't try to get the chemical name out, but they're known as the forever chemicals. It's basically like a Teflon. They put this material inside to be able to protect firefighters from exposures to heat, or let the heat through, but also prevent the exposure to heat coming through to the skin, and also taking the moisture away from the skin on the moisture barrier of the suits. They've been found to cause cancer, so many of the manufacturers are holding up production, and we're looking at buying this bunker gear when the new standard comes to fruition, and which is within the next year, we've been advised. And once the new standard's in place, the manufacturers will have the PFAS-free gear to make the new bunker gear with, and we'll be making those purchases. The expectation, of course, is that the price will increase with the new technology that they have to put into developing moisture barrier without this, basically this chemical process. So that's the process there as we move through, and we will be having to replace all of our gear in time. All of the gear we currently have in-house is made with the old standard, so it does have those gear chemicals in there. We're trying to reduce our exposure to that by limiting the times we wear them, but the purchase going forward will be to replace all. Small equipment, those are the general needs of the department when it comes to fire hose apparatus or appliances like hoses, nozzles, all of the fixtures we need to get the pumping done on the trucks. We also have our forcible entry tools, our rescue tools, things we need to get into buildings, tools we need to get into vehicles with. We also have all of our excavation or I'm losing the word, after fire suppression. Kent, help me out there with the wording.
Overhaul.
Overall, all of the gear we need to do an overhaul, safe overhaul on the scene. So all of the small gear that has a regular turnover within the department, and very important use. The fast rescue craft, which is once again, that one there is a carryover, and this will be the final year carryover. We will get this done, just due to the process of putting together the last truck apparatus tender that took us more time than expected with our consultants. We did have that posted, or do have it posted. It closes, I believe, at the end of this week. But then the focus has shifted to the fast rescue craft. We have a meeting next week. The potential is to get it out here before the end of fiscal, but the purchase would be in the 25-26 budget year. Same with the engine 2 replacement. We went from 2 million in the budget, or 1.5, I believe it was, 2 years ago, down to 50,000 last year. The 50,000 was just the consultant's fee. The next purchase is going to be around 2 million for the actual engine replacement there in 25-26 as we work towards that. And once again, that tender closes the end of this week. It is. Self-contained breathing apparatus, that's a carryover of the new initiative we brought forward last year to replace all existing SCBAs, or self-contained breathing apparatus, with the newest version of the MSA G1, which gives us much more accountability on scene, much more vision through heat and smoke conditions, and much more accountability, once I mentioned, back and forth between partners that are inside working on the scene and the incident commanders outside. They can monitor the actions of the actual crews inside with the packs with this new technology. So that's what we're moving towards and advancing that. And I believe that's all I have on the capital side, Chair.
Generators are under operational.
No, generators, we've worked with both, Paul's not in here, assets management and public works, as they're all public works buildings aside from the odd exception. So that was a discussion we had. Dan, do you recall who's bringing that forward? I know I wasn't.
No, I think we can check in with Paul and see.
Yeah, I believe we'll have the updates on that.
But it'll fall to our
Through
operational
emergency
budget.
measures, yes.
Cause it's important, I know Councillor Duran would be passionate about this and he can
No,
speak to it,
definitely.
but with the Cody Banks one, we talked about taking the portable one out of the new police station, I think, to put in. But he's been waiting for a long time, so when you see 50,000, if we're not buying a new generator for Cody Banks, is it 50,000 just for the electrical work? That's what I was wondering.
We'll consult with assets management and get the answers to that, Chair.
Okay,
The Cody Banks is there.
it is.
Yes, they're all listed there, but we had a meeting several months ago now where we were deciding where these generators and the purchase of and the installation goes to, and because the buildings are public works and because assets management does overall control of that, the emergency measures aspect of it was just the budgeting purposes. So once we get all those numbers again, we'll come back at it like we'll do through assets.
I have a question.
Okay,
So, Chief,
you got that letter that, the drop-in centers, location for drop-in centers, you signed off a bunch of them, like Kirk and St. James.
Oh, the MOU, your worship? Yes.
So are we providing generators for those facilities?
No, your worship.
They would have applied through the province, I
Yes,
think,
there
for
was
their own.
the Provincial Reception Center Resiliency Fund
Okay,
that was available through the province for all the people that had designated reception centers. They could apply through those for assistance. I think it was up to 50,000 for generator installation. But there was other funding available as well too, a much higher number involved with different aspects of it. But it had to be a designated reception center.
Well, we've been discussing this since February 3rd of 2023, when we had that cold spell.
Are we talking about just conference centers and establishing those,
Comfort
worship?
reception centers.
Yes, I'm actually working with the Community Action Committee.
Yeah,
And
do they have monies?
We're meeting tomorrow and with some of our MOU, our community partners, to have that initial discussion to see how we can get those two parties together to make that something that happens in the city
Okay,
as needed.
okay, that's where
Yes, your worship,
we
that's
wanna make
exactly where
sure
we're
we have
going.
something, as a backup. Because these reception centers, we don't have to go to an EMO.
For our reception centers, in accordance with our emergency measures operations, we do. That's how those reception centers
So we
operate.
declare a state of emergency to open up those shelters?
At least establish the emergency measures organization, your worship.
Well,
That's it, currently as our EMO bylaw and our emergency measures organization plan works.
But that's where we had the problem, February 3rd of.
Which is why it's, in this instance here, it's being taken out of city direct hands
Separated.
and put in the two parties that can provide that service.
Two
This is
parties
what
being
we're-
the CAC and the.
The CAC
facilities.
and the actual occupancy. So that's what we're trying to establish here, your worship, with them.
Okay, so in the budget, you have 2 million for the new fire station. Like,
Our station.
have we decided where we're going?
No, your worship,
Oh,
in
okay.
February, that's why there's, the details on this are a little scant, because in February, at the committee meeting in February, we were sharing the fire underwriter survey recommendations and report, and that's part and parcel of that. We have to bring that forward, so there's not a whole lot of information I can get into on that in the open session. We have shared the fire underwriters in the closed, your worship.
Yeah, the reason I ask, because your budget for 24-25 was 1.5 million, now you're going up to 5 million for capital. 25-26, is that right? If I look in the gray is your 5-year for 25-26, it's 5,010,000.
Yes, your worship. That's with the new engine purchase of approximately $2 million.
So did we buy a new engine back in 22-23? It says purchase for 1.3 million,
We did not, that was a carryover, your worship.
so now it's up to 2 million?
It is, and though that's a conservative estimate because of the time between ordering and the processing building of the truck and the delivery, is in some instances with manufacturers extended up to 4 years. So the pricing cannot be guaranteed in many of the contracts that are being signed now in the industry. And that's the sort of situation we're under because of the sort of backlog that became of the pandemic and everything that shortage-wise from there. But we work with them, and there are other manufacturers that have shorter delivery times, of course, but this is an estimate. At best estimate.
Okay, Madam Chair, it's just that I've been at a couple of standing committee meetings and all the capital budgets are up, so we're gonna have to cut and slice somewhere. If we wanna keep within that 50 million, like, I think, what is it, $1 million with to set aside 10%, 100,000, right, Dan? So,
safety doesn't take a holiday though, your worship, we'll
well,
have to,
then we'll have to cut somewhere else in Parks and Recreation or somewhere else. It's just, we have to keep in mind that we can't go too high on the capital budget.
Understood, your worship, and we just try to bring forward
Bare
the
bones,
needs
yeah.
of the department to serve the city that we're responsible for, and I do like that motto, Chair, safety doesn't take a holiday, that's cool. Worked out on that.
You can use that.
Yes.
I'll get to you in a second, Councillor John. Yes, Councillor Ramsey?
When you said we gotta replace an engine 2, and the RFPs are closing this week, and we go through this almost every 2 years, how long does it take to build this rig, and do we have to put that money in the budget if we're not gonna receive that vehicle for another 2 years? Does it take that long to build it?
It could take up to 4 years.
So why, so could we not look at 2 or 3 or 4 years down the road? Sort of budget for that money, or do you have to have the money up front?
When you make the purchase, when you make the agreement through the tendering contract, and I can defer to Dan on this, but you have to confirm the funds, and I think there's an advance made at that point, but how the actual funding works, I'm not sure if there's a borrowing process where we're paying it back over 10 years, but that's sort of the financial side of it.
Okay. Because it just doesn't make sense that you're putting it in the budget and then you're not gonna receive the vehicle for 2 to 3 years. So why not put it in next year's budget if you have some money, or the year after?
Which is why we reduced the capital request from last year down from approximately 1.5 to 50,000. Simply because we knew we couldn't deliver on that, but this year
Okay.
where we have to award a tender to somebody, we have to have that money to be able to provide that.
Yeah, because you're not gonna go buy a car and then all of a sudden give them the money, not receive the vehicle. You know, I mean,
There is a build to that, like it's a
they're
full
playing with your
process.
money, right?
The financial commitment, though,
Exactly.
has to be made up front. Like, the elected members have to agree on the commitment to that amount of money before the chief can even start anything as far as,
But he said the RFP is going this week, did you not?
Yes, we had the consultants throughout the year work on the package, we put that together, now it comes to us to review, score, and eventually bring through committee to council for an award.
But if we are looking at, like his worship said, where all these budgets are showing, if it's committed for, is that able to be adjusted on the books when you're looking at actual spending? This is what do you know what I mean when I say that? Like, we know that this is committed, we've committed that this is. But if we're in a crunch with a big ask coming forward, and we know that the reality is we're not gonna have a $2 million purchase this year, can that be shown as an actual?
So if I may, there's really two aspects to any capital purchase that we have to discuss and approve at the council. One is the project itself, so yes, we're going to buy a new engine to replace engine 2. And then the other is the spending component of it, so when are we going to spend the money to buy that truck? So if something's 2 years out, like our transit buses are a couple of years out, we have to make a decision to sign a contract to buy a bus in 2 years. We may not pay for it until 2 years, but we have to approve the project. And the timing of that capital spending would be within that 5-year capital expenditure plan that we
Yes.
approve with our budget. So although we're most concerned with the next 12 months of spending, our next fiscal year, with capital projects, we are going to have to
Project.
approve a project and approve a project and a portion of the spending out beyond the next 12 months.
But not the full 2 million perhaps for next, it's just for someone like me who really struggles to understand all the finances, and I'm probably not my strength, it's really good to see the actuals, and I think actually our CIO interim here was really clear when we did budget before, it's so important to have actual what we're gonna spend, so that people.
And we're really trying to move towards, putting in that 5-year plan when we actually plan to
Yeah.
complete a project and spend the money, as opposed to, lumping it all into the current year and saying, we'll get to it whenever. It might be
Right.
3 years before we get to it. Doesn't help with planning for long-term debt and interest costs and that kind of thing.
Exactly, yeah.
So,
Thank you. Councillor Duran, I know you had a question?
Engine 2, what is that? And the question I have is, have we ever went any further with the mayors of talking about, I brought it up before, Cornwall and Stratford, to see, like, this is a $2 million build. I mean, we bought 2 fire trucks the last couple of years at $1 million, I think 1.1 or $1.2 million. So if this is 2 million, like, so if we have a ladder truck and North River has one and Stratford has one, is there any thought process of getting together on this stuff? I mean, it's an awful lot of money to have all these vehicles in all these short distance, right? And I know we talked about it before and you said the response times and all that stuff, but at some point, someone has to make a handout to see if there's any interest, and has that happened?
Not fire department to fire department in any aspect, Councillor Duran. I know Worship has had some talks, I think,
with Stratford and Cornwall.
unofficially.
And about police services too.
Many of the aspects in regards to those, which seem like standalones, you might think, this engine, that engine, and this truck, those requirements are all predetermined for us through the fire underwriters, who determine that for this type of building in this type of city, it requires this amount for an initial response, and that would be trucks and personnel, and this amount for a secondary or follow-on response, which again was additional trucks and personnel. So the fire department has to equip itself with both those things, the required apparatus and the pumping capacity, and the required personnel, and that's what we do as a municipality. We can't extend or break down those numbers for some of the other municipalities because we have our own response zones. And with the city growing as it is, the need for apparatus, stations is only going to increase, of course, as the city grows. The emergency services, police and fire have to grow as well. So that is part of that. So we have these discussions with them. We train with these both of these departments officially and unofficially. Unofficially being at the Monday nights at the fire school, but officially we get together at different times in an association to get together and train. But you can't really share those type of resources because you cannot count on that response from a truck in Stratford to reach the destination in Charlottetown in any kind of time to do any significant good. So that's why we have to have our own. And the city sets the standard on the island basically for that type of protection because our city is the largest, the department is the largest, and obviously our fleet and personnel would be the largest along with that. But I do appreciate your sentiments and that shared services and the combined training is really a big thing and we work closely with Stratford and that, some drivers training and some ladders operation course. We brought some people up from New Brunswick for that and had many of our personnel on it. So we do have a good relationship with them, but that shared services for initial response vehicles just, it doesn't work because of the actual geography.
Okay. I'm just thinking like, say Montreal, you know, they have a big city, so do they have fire departments like the same size as your department in all these different areas? Like,
It would, and it'd have many smaller ones as well, single station, single unit stations where they'd have just maybe one ladder truck because they need a ladder truck for that area. And to get it from one of the other stations that are positioned throughout the city wouldn't get there in time. So they build standalone one-ofs in certain situations because of the construction out there. But yes, they have many fire stations throughout.
Satellite stations.
Yes, all over, and many of them are much bigger than ours and some smaller, of course.
And is the response time the same
It is.
for no matter where you are?
That's right.
You have a
The response
requisite
times
amount of
are, the response times for a career department are different because you're leading the station as a fully career and equipped department. So to get there and take your operations on, you get there quicker. With a combination department that we have or a volunteer department, both of those, you have a different response time, but we meet that in our expectations with both of our stations currently. But in a career department like Montreal, they would have stricter response times, like there would be 60 seconds out of the firehouse type thing. You can't have that with a volunteer response. So there are some different standards there, but at the end of the day, it's about that 10 minutes having your personnel there and enough apparatus to do the job safely of a structure on fire.
just to touch on that, what you've said, you know, sometimes when you go through, we go through small towns there in the spring on the bikes and you see a fire truck parked in a small building somewhere, right? So you're wondering, okay, you've said about the satellite station. Is that an option here? Like we're putting money aside for a new station or new land or whatever. Can we downsize that to getting a satellite station somewhere or?
You'll have a lot more clarity on that, Councillor Drawn, after we have the recommendations through February's report in regards to the fire underwriters. And it'll give you the clear picture of exactly the needs within the city and you'll be able to see what we need at that point and it'll explain why that won't work in this particular instance. But as the city grows, there may be that type of situation down the line, but I can explain that more fully when the report comes in February.
Okay, so all this stuff that you're putting in here, sorry.
Oh,
I just-
this is important.
All the stuff that you're putting in here, as we discussed in budget times before, these are capital asks. We put them in and then they don't get acted on, right? And we've had this discussion before, whereas the generator at Sherwood Hall, where we're looking for a warming center for years. And we've put money in the budget for a generator and, heat pump is in there now. So I see it here again and I appreciate that, but what is going to make that happen? Like I know you reduced your asks here in capital, so if we prove it this year, last year, and the year before, and it doesn't get acted on, how are we gonna make sure the stuff that we are approving is gonna be acted on? Because that was the frustrating part last year, like in all of our capital budgets, and here we are, we're putting it all in, we get half of the budget passed, or we pass the budget, half the work's done, and then it goes away.
I can answer on behalf of the fire department and share exactly that we share that frustration as well. There's many times, the term spinning our wheels, in engaging with the manufacturers, discussing purchase options, not being able to get delivery of that year. In many instances, that's what it comes down to, and in some cases, when we need to spec or put specifications for something that's Charlottetown specific, that takes that time in the groups committee to put it together. So even though the best intentions are there, our goal is never to have to carry that over, it's to take action. And I will, with the generators, I will engage with the assets manager, and I will be having a fuller answer come our February meeting or the next meeting we have on budgeting and all. We'll have much fuller detail on the generator use. and
I know
research.
that we were 6 years ago, we approved that money, so we shouldn't have to approve it every year, it was approved 6 years ago, so just get the work done. I think
Appreciate that, thank you.
So just to follow up there, Madam Chair,
Mhm.
if you drive west to Cornwall, the new building's going up, you require engine 2 or engine 3, you go to the east, buildings are going up and more to go up with the Gray Group. So why can't, just to follow up on what Councillor Duran is saying, why don't we do some procurement, the 3 municipalities?
Oh, is it procurement?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like, again, this
we
is,
can
we
investigate
have to
that.
be looking at the shared service and a common front. And, you know, like, I've heard a lot about fiscal due diligence, and we've gone through that in a couple of resolutions that were already passed by council in November and December, and we had to push the pause button on it, on both projects. And then there was the other project under the FCM with the switch program, we did our fiscal due diligence after the resolutions were passed. So what we're talking about here is like, if we're not buying it this year, again, we just need some room in our capital budget to make, you know, have those expenditures that we know could happen this year, like a generator for Cody Banks, a generator for one of the reception centers that have volunteered to put their church or their community building up for, you know, use as a reception or warming center. So that's, I think we have to look at the reality, and that, again, it comes down to that due diligence. Let's do that due diligence before, instead of passing the resolution and then coming back and say, okay, wait now, I don't know if we're gonna be able to do that. Because we pressed it out over 3 or 5 years, and it doesn't look like it's gonna be feasible, or we have to do something to either cut services or raise taxes or find new revenue. So I'm looking again at maybe the 3, if we look at the 3 facilities, Stratford, Charlottetown, Cornwall, fire services, doing a common procurement. Because
Yeah,
they're
that's
gonna
something-
need the equipment that we are already using, and we'll have to purchase to replace what we have.
Oh, definitely, your worship. That's something I can take maybe offline with Director of Finance Dan, and we
You
can
know,
have a discussion.
And I think it's Councillor Duran that raised it, like, if we come up with, you know, 3, the province Atlantic Procurement Agreement was set up to do that. Provinces come together to buy, let's say, a mainframe computer system. Well, it's not just going to Prince Edward Island, it could go to Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Newfoundland. So let's try to bring them together, because Councillor Duran, the only way we can all come together is that group down there at the Shaw Building will have to say, Charlottetown, Stratford, Cornwall, you guys have to work together on fire services and police services. This is a way that we can find a portal into getting something started.
Best bang for the buck. Okay. Everybody good on that? Thank you, Fire Chief Maney. The next item on our agenda is an update on the taxi bylaw update. So for the next number of meetings, we will be, as part of our commitment in council, we have agreed to start looking at bylaws that fall to our particular committees, seeing which ones need to be amended or updated, and maybe look at ones that maybe aren't even necessarily needed. So I think we're gonna hear from Chief McGonnell first, and then we have Mark King here, who's going to do a little presentation to us as a committee too, and give us a chance to ask some questions. So turn it over to you, Chief McGonnell.
Well, thank you, Chair. First of all, I want to thank members of the committee and the mayor for attending our swearing-in ceremony and award ceremony last week. It's meaningful to my staff to have you present and mark those occasions. Thank you for that. And our CAO, who's very important. It's not often that we get to interact in those settings, so when staff can see the city in a bigger picture, it's always a good thing. I have 4 reports. The first, as the chair indicated, is regarding the taxi bylaw. I have asked staff to review our taxi bylaw, and the purpose of this report is just to inform committee and council of that. Certainly, that review will include a jurisdictional stand, consulting with industry stakeholders. And once all of that is completed, the recommendations will come back to committee for discussion. We're just very conscious that the transportation industry is evolving very quickly. And I know that our taxi bylaw is very dated, and we just want to make sure that we're not standing in the way of providing access to transportation to our citizens by having outdated bylaws and being restrictive in trying to do a good thing, actually being a hindrance. And so we're looking forward to hearing that, and also reflecting on our ongoing discussion and commitment about accessible transportation in our city and greater Charlottetown area, and how we can certainly bring that to the next step. So happy to answer any questions about that.
Sure.
You wanna hear Mark first, or do you wanna ask?
Oh, no, this is just with this,
Okay.
just very quickly. Thank you for that, Chief. I just left one of the meeting of Simmons there anyway. With the accessible taxis, would this be under the same bylaw? Or is that gonna be something separate allowing, because they're still going on with this and they're trying to get a hold of certain individual and.
Well, accessible taxis is a particularly challenging issue within transportation, so our taxi industry has certainly evolved over the years. It used to be very robust, and over the last number of years, just because of other types of transportation and ride-sharing apps and micro-transportation, taxi industry isn't as resilient as it once was. So we've engaged them numerous times to try to incentivize the current taxi industry to provide accessible transportation. We've worked with the province and interest groups to do that, and we haven't had, to be truthful, we haven't had much success in that. To provide accessible taxi service isn't cheap, and it's certainly but it's certainly important, and we haven't lost sight of that. So Councillor Ramsey, although it's different, we're still have accessible taxis very much in the forefront of our mind as we work through this. I don't know if that answers your question or not, but.
It's just that, as I said, I was just at the meeting with them and they asked me to ask that question, if we're still sort of working on that aspect, or did you find out anything more on it? Was it not brought up as one of our last meetings?
And I think Councillor Ramsey, from my understanding of what we'll probably hear a little bit more from Mark here in a moment, is we know accessible transportation is really important. The taxi bylaw, parts of that are really challenging to enforce, to look at, to follow. So it's taking that taxi bylaw and maybe switching our focus to how can we promote and encourage accessible transportation, and maybe not limit it just to the taxi industry. I think what we're hearing is that there's more ride shares coming, or vehicle for hire. There's some of the bylaws and stuff that I've tried to look into to see if I tried to do my own jurisdictional scan, but it's a little challenging, so I'm glad Melanie's here to help us with that piece. But let's listen to Mark, where they're coming from. They have something prepared, and I'm sure we'll have some questions.
Thank you, Councillor
Sorry
Cape.
to put you on the spot.
That's okay. No, I don't really, we've kind of shifted here a little bit, and I
Okay.
don't really have a presentation per se, but I've been asked to sit in here in place of Bylaw Officer Sutcliffe, because he's out of province today. But I guess I've been asked to sit here and kind of make myself available to answer any questions, because the current climate that we're living in, when we're talking about our bylaw now, it's completely outdated. And ever since the introduction by the province in 2022 of a new licensing, it's really thrown the bylaw and the way taxiing happens within the city into chaos. Because it's, so in early 2022, the province introduced a new ride share license. And essentially what that means is that anybody that wants to kind of go to Access PEI now, acquire what they call a Class 4 license, there's really no requirements. And you can drive and you can taxi anywhere within the province right now
So our bylaw would contravene.
Our bylaw will, but
Absolutely.
the only difference that we, anything that we would restrict within the city would be, we wouldn't let any of these other companies either put decals on their vehicle, a roof light, and they wouldn't have access to any of our taxi designated parking. But outside of that, they can't solicit, but they can pick up, they can drop off, they do it through apps, and there's really nothing we can do about it at this point. So it's a big change. So we currently have 5 taxi stands now, and we actually have, the bylaw reads to operate a stand, there's lots of different requirements within there now. But one of the funny requirements that when I was reading through it, that a stand actually requires a functioning radio system, communication system, to dispatch your, but we have one of the stands now that currently has challenged that, because they don't actually have a functioning radio system within there. So when they applied for their stand license, we kind of looked at with Chief McConnell here, and we kind of looked at the whole thing, and we kind of went, yeah, well, that makes sense. And they do all their dispatching just as this rideshare company does. They do it all through phones. They don't have a central dispatch system. They do it all through phones, and they do it all through apps. Personally, I don't see anything wrong with that, right? But the bylaw stipulates that we really should have a functioning. So that shows how outdated
Right.
our bylaw is.
2024.
This is really just to open up a dialogue here, and as most of you know, but over the last couple of months, Summerside repealed their bylaw, taxi bylaw. Now, that's not saying we should or we shouldn't follow Summerside's lead, but I think what Summerside did at least was present another option and kind of make us stand up and look today and say, is our bylaw actually working the way it should be? And is it something we should take a look at? Do we actually need the bylaw?
And this is the introduction to that conversation, because there's still gonna be some more to come back as far
Right.
as a
Right.
formal recommendation to committee.
Right, yeah. So this is just an initial step really to get it on
And I
committee's
know his
radar.
worship is big on the accessible transportation, that's what I said, if we chase, well, not necessarily taxi, it's accessible transportation. We want people in our community who have disabilities or challenges to be able to access transportation. Doesn't have to necessarily be a taxi,
Which
cause it
is-
might be a carry that
Right.
comes to pick them
We have
up.
accessible transportation, happy.
Yeah. But
But there
those,
are gaps in
and
that.
this opens up
As
that
we speak right now.
conversation
Right.
where someone like Pat and the Elephant might have better access to different grants and opportunities for money to extend hours or look at things, but I think we have to keep the focus on what this present accessible taxi bylaw is in front of us, and again, it is, we're in 2024, people don't, there's people, I think you call Yellow Cab, you get Toronto, and they dispatch from there.
No
Or
question.
somewhere, I don't know where they're
Yeah,
dispatching from,
yeah.
Hong Kong,
Yeah.
but that's where your taxi's coming from, so
So we
you
currently
have to
have
look
the,
at
I
it,
mean,
cause it's
the,
not a real good bylaw.
no,
right now.
no. And the one company, we do have one company functioning outside of the bylaw.
Yeah.
And it's Kari, K-A-R-I, I'm sure some of you may have used it. And we've had inquiries over the last couple of weeks. I can certainly tell you that Bylaw Officer Sutcliffe received a call from the big player in the game, which is Uber.
Yeah.
And they have intentions of coming here within the next 6 months. So when they set shop up, I mean, that's really, gonna make you stand up and really take a look at the bylaw, I think, so.
I don't think, it's good. Does anybody have any questions for Mark or Brad on this?
Well, if I could just make just one comment, I think this is, it's a prudent step at this point. We will be, or are the only remaining jurisdiction on the island to have a taxi bylaw. And either, we have to reflect on that and see if it still makes sense, or we have to, challenge our partners and our neighbors to play a role in this. We can't have, be an island in the center of an island, and where the rules are different, just a few streets away, and where a company, and we have had this in the past, when they were non-compliant to our bylaws, would simply just set up shop in the neighboring jurisdiction and operate without any rules, and so we have to see if that makes sense, and what we can say, we'll bring it back to committee with our findings and our recommendations, and I'm sure we'll garner a lot of great discussion.
So Madam Chair, the last time it was amended was July 24th, 2023. There was another amendment April 25th, 2022. So we've amended it. Right? And I've said to you before, Mark, I think there are 3 pillars in this bylaw. It's about drivers, they're qualified, they're, we know who they are. There's also equipment, it's inspected, and then there's affordable fares. I think you're having challenges on the last one, the affordable fares. Because I think you're checking off the boxes for ensuring that the drivers, are good citizens. Equipment is safe, the back wheel's not falling off. But the fares is a real difficult one, especially with the airport authority where they have, a different set of fares, and it's also in our bylaw.
But wouldn't the province, like, your car would have to be inspected, insured anyway, under the PI Traffic Act, right? Like, that
This is a commercial vehicle.
No, I know, but it would still have to be insured and inspected, cause that's like part of the province's requirement, like you have, like, for anybody, if you live in Stratford, if you live in Charlestown.
Right.
So that's gonna hopefully be met.
So we actually require that 30 days prior to, an inspection, 30 days prior to you coming in and applying for your license.
And I did send out the bylaws amended Fredericton has gone through a amendment in their bylaw.
Yeah.
They also now have a cyber or a Uber type of bylaw too. So, Fredericton is about 70,000, we're 45,000. We're almost in the same park. Halifax is a little different, but, they must have the bylaws for a reason. And what's the other option that Summerside has since they repealed theirs? Saxon bylaw. What have they replaced it with, if anything?
Nothing,
Nothing.
I think they're just trying to get
Nothing.
out of the way.
Let industry do it and follow
I think they're just
the
trying to
rules.
get out of the way, let industry do it.
Dan, did you have something to chime in?
Thank you, Chair. Just in response to His Worship's question, I think we have, as we go through these bylaws, we have to ask ourselves kind of first time through the door, why do we have this bylaw? And, there's probably good reasons for having this in the past, licensing to generate revenue, there was, we had regulated trucking, back probably the same time, so business has changed over the years. I think if it's about licensing, that's something the province does. If it's about safety inspections, that's also something that's administered through motor vehicle and permitting. So I think we really have to ask the question, what do we want to accomplish, or what do we need to make sure happens that some other authority isn't already looking after? And if there's not a role for us there, particularly if we don't have capacity to enforce or to even monitor effectively some of those aspects, we probably should get out of the business, because there's an inference that we have some expertise or some control over a situation that we probably don't have. So it's dangerous that way.
Madam Chair, I think that's why it falls under police. I think when licensing, if you're a commercial operator and you're carrying people around, I know Uber doesn't do it, Kerry doesn't do it, but that's a risk when you go into Uber or Kerry. You're expecting that those safeguards in our community are already checked out, that the driver is licensed, but also, there's not any encumbrances against this person. The equipment is not just inspected at a service station, but there's some other checks and balances because it's a commercial vehicle, and that the fares are affordable. Those are the safeguards.
I think too, your worship, though, to be fair, and I know for sure that I have been, our population has changed in the city, and there's lots of times when you think this is who it's registered to and this is who's assigned to drive, but I'm taking the weekend off, I know for sure. I've been in cabs where his brothers picked me up, and I don't know if he was actually ever cleared through our police services. But that's the reality of what we're up against. So I think that's what I'm understanding when they're saying this is not up to date. They're not able to micromanage or oversee all of that. And that's where I prefer, like when we look at accessible stuff, which is my passion, which we were trying to focus on with the taxi bylaw, I've never really understood it. I did read it over to kind of see what it was, and it, to me, it's something that,
Integrated.
oh, it needs to go. I'm all over that and letting and seeing. Again, if it wasn't that, I just don't think it's feasible or even reasonable to think that we'd actually be able to oversee what's in that bylaw today.
But we could say that about other bylaws.
Sure, and I think they need to be
We said
looked
that
at.
about the helmet bylaw,
Yeah,
right? Like
but do you think
police
that's
officers have got more important things than pulling over a
Right.
bicycle. Or a scooter rider without a helmet. Like, there's lots of things that we can say are more important,
But there's an expectation that that's the law. We've had that conversation, and hopefully it's an educational tool for people to know that you should wear your helmet.
Yeah.
But like I asked before, if I'm driving a scooter 60 kilometers down Grafton Street, and there's no recognition for a lot of that right now either, and I have a helmet on, I hit a pothole, is it gonna save me? Probably not.
I think just in all fairness to the committee and to council, that give us an opportunity to do this work and get back to you and get the pulse of, you know, not just the industry, but the citizens and other stakeholders in this, and then give you better information to, you know, to weigh in on this.
Because if you actually read through the bylaw and spend some time reading through the bylaws, it's like a lot of documents that get created in the world that we're living in today. The minute they get approved, they're almost outdated.
Just read the zoning and development bylaw.
Right.
It's a great read. You wanna stay up all night.
Yeah.
Sue, sorry.
Madam Chair, just in the interest of time, I mean, the report recommendation is to allow police to go back and do an actual jurisdictional scan and just see what the state of the union is in other areas and come back with more fulsome reports. So I would ask that we move on at this
Sure.
point in time on that one.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, Brad, you're up again with the dangerous and hazardous unsightly infraction.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to have one property secured in accordance with the National Fire Protection Association bylaw, section 10.13, adopted by the City of Charlottetown, Uniform Fire Code and Dangerous Hazard bylaw of the City of Charlottetown. The staff recommends that council give Public Works Manager the authorization to secure the building and garage by boarding up the windows, doors, painting the material covering the doors and windows at the property owner's expense, located at 31 Kirkwood Drive in Charlottetown, in accordance with the terms of the National Fire Protection Association 10.13 and the Dangerous Hazard and Unsightly bylaw of the City of Charlottetown.
I'll move it.
And I know this is gonna be asked at council, so when this comes into effect and we move this and council approves this, does that then start the process for the next steps where there's that 18 months to do something, or do they just leave it boarded up indefinitely?
No,
She passed away.
maybe I'll get Kent to weigh in. I think, I believe that once the building becomes secured, then that's when the 18 months.
Okay, so it is that 18 months, I just wanna make sure that we're ready to answer.
Yeah, so once it's approved by you guys, by you people, that everything's safe and everything, then the clock starts to tick.
Under the unsightly bylaw, it's 18 months from when it's
Secured. So we need to get council to approve.
So some people can almost get an extra 2 or 3 years out of it. You know, but if you keep, what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's what's the issue is, right? You know, like, there's always complaints coming in and they say it's sort of boarded up, it's secure, everything like that, and then all of a sudden, you're gonna go and make sure it's done right again. So that's another 18 months added on. So there won't be any work done to the place, in my opinion. Because we all drive by it 18,000 times a day, and we see it, it's been like that for years. But anyway, I'll I'll make a motion to move it to council.
Seconded, all in favor of moving this to council? Okay, thank you. Okay, our next report is draft bylaw amendments to the dangerous and unsightly bylaw.
Thanks again, Chair. The purpose of the third report is to update committee on the dangerous, hazard, and unsightly premises bylaw and work underway to review the draft amendment, gather recommended changes, and seek approval to move to council. I have Melanie here today that I'm hoping to elaborate on the valuable work she's done in relation to this, because we know that this is one of our bylaws that certainly needs updating.
So today we are presenting, Madam Chair and Committee, a draft amendment concept. It includes two changes that had to be made. One is to align this outdated bylaw to the MGA requirements. The other is to write in the enforcement provisions that are found in the bylaw, the enforcement and summary proceedings bylaw that was passed August 27th, 2024. Which replaces the summary proceedings bylaw. And third was just to write in some critical changes that will really clarify the process for those that are enforcing this bylaw. It will enable them to enforce more clearly, easier, and also the public will be more aware of what does and does not fall under dangerous, hazardous, and unsightly. So those are the three pieces today. We've also heard a lot of questions around the billing and lien processes. And we've formed a group. We met January 9th. We meet again next week. And we're gonna work through the processes, both in mapping out the unsightly response process and also the billing that happens alongside, and that question of, do we have any alternates other than the lien process? So that work will continue once the amendment process continues hopefully, but the other work will continue. So today really all that's in front of us is to look at amendments to this bylaw.
Thank you. So in Cole's notes version, Melanie, and there's a lot of information there. We're looking at, I know we had lots of discussion with this where every time there was a complaint with our bylaw officer having to bring something to committee to then go to council, is that going to be omitted?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, so that requirement was written into the enforcement bylaw that was passed in the summer. So all of those requirements that will enable staff to respond more quickly and efficiently have been added. So maybe I'll just walk through the document.
Changes,
Do you
yeah,
have it?
because
Yes, okay.
there's,
So on page 1, basically all you're seeing there is changes that will align this to the MGA requirements. So there's how, like the formatting, how the bylaw is presented, the wording, the template, adding in the chief administrative officer definition, changing the council definition. So all of that's under the MGA.
Is this page 24, right, of our digital copy?
you
Right.
are on.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, perfect.
So all that's crossed out is gone, and you just start with title, this bylaw may be known and be set as
So
Charlottetown dangerous,
this- exactly, so it's to be known as Charlottetown Dangerous, Hazardous, and Unsightly Premises Bylaw. We've updated the authority, which is specific to what the MGA requires. Part 3, you'll see changes to the definitions, additions, and edits. That's all in alignment with the MGA. And again, there is an expert in-house that went through all of this, and this is what you're seeing happen to some of the bylaws that are updated, including this one. So if we move to the next section, so we move down to section 3, and you'll see some formatting, some changes to numbering. The first insertion you'll see, an addition, it's under 3.9. And there it defines the enforcement and summary proceedings bylaw. So much of the changes made to this bylaw were made word for word as required under that enforcement and summary proceedings bylaw, adopted this summer. Following that 3.10, the inspector, that was worded exactly as was required in that enforcement and summary proceedings bylaw from August. Litter is new. Staff are recommending specific changes to identify what litter is as clearly and succinctly as possible. So under that, you'll see 4 sections, A, B, C, and D. I've taken the recommendations and we've tried to group under common themes, A being recycling material, being refuse, C, undesirable material, and D needs a header. The key topics under this are discarded machinery, manufactured goods, mobile homes, like derelict vehicles falls under that, furniture and appliances, indoor and outdoor. So it's kind of,
Construction material or something.
Material waste, something
Used to be referred to as dumping, like, those are the elements that people used to dump when you come to that.
We still have signage, no dumping,
Exactly, yeah.
don't know what that means.
I don't think they do either, because they keep dumping.
okay, this is good. So our options are material waste dumping, you mentioned
Junk.
junk. Junk, okay.
Unused?
It's good, I'll write down everything you say and then we'll do
That's
some
why we pay you the bucks.
voting.
Pick a name out.
Okay. And I would really like to credit bylaw enforcement, they've provided the wording and recommendations here. So within that, recycling was lumped together underneath. So a really good definition on even if you think it's a value, if it's been used up partially or in whole, set aside, discarded. Undesirable material speaks to specific pieces. You'll notice in there the growth of grass or weeds is also in there. That was changed to 6 inches, 152.4 millimeters. 6 inches is just easier, it's half a foot. Once grass exceeds half a foot, you get into a situation where if it gets any further, if it gets up to 8 inches, our equipment can't get in there to clean it up. So then you end up, instead of 1 crew, you've got 2 or 3 crews. So it gives us a window of time to respond.
What is the story with that? Remember we had an issue there last year with a resident? That, remember that? And
Still around.
yeah, and if it's his property and as long as it's not up that high, but if it's that high,
I think that's where clarity of the bylaw is coming in
He thought he
place.
was growing wheat.
So
well, he's
that,
growing something anyway, but anyway, it's just,
so that's a little clearer in what would be considered unsightly or too long by the city. That's why this would be.
someone's gonna run with a ruler.
I think they probably have
Yeah.
good
Yeah.
sense of.
I think you've addressed naturalization, have you not?
Well, no, that came up last Friday and there's a point that needs to be made. I don't know, this bylaw is all about what can't be done and I'm wondering if it isn't a schedule or if it isn't something under environment sustainability, because somebody needs to be able to monitor that. It's because there's like Japanese knotweed, for example.
that was what I
Japanese
was trying to-
knotweed is
Right.
incredibly invasive. So if you have a property that's got Japanese knotweed on it, we aren't experts in Japanese knotweed or any of the other invasive species. So it's either a schedule as part of this.
I think that myself, I would recommend that go to environment and sustainability with support from police if they felt it wasn't appropriate.
And so they did submit a few reports. They do have some good wording on that. I just don't know where this bylaw doesn't really speak to exceptions. How do we add exceptions? And where would that come?
And there is a part 2 that could be further discussed after today anyway, it says, right, so.
So in a schedule, do you have to take it back to council to amend the bylaw, or can you just amend the schedule through the bureaucracy, whether it's police or it's?
We've had that debate in the past over the schedule of rates for taxis, and I think the consensus at that time was it would go back to council.
Yeah, see, that elongates the process, right?
Chair?
Certainly,
Yeah.
Sorry, I've noticed other bylaws where the schedules have been updated, but not the bylaw. Can both be done separately so that the bylaw can move forward and the schedule can come later? Is that an option?
That's what I think you were just
Yeah,
saying.
I think the spirit and our understanding was that the schedules were purposely made that way so that they could be more readily adaptable. But I'm just giving a little bit of continuity of previous discussions that we've had when we tried to amend schedules, that we went back to council. We'd be happy to be able to leave the schedules, more flexible and nimble to respond, so.
And more easily updated, because if you have to change a bylaw, amend a bylaw every time
It
you add a
takes-
schedule, it
it's-
takes forever.
6.
I don't think you have to do like first and second reading, everything all over again for a schedule, do you?
Yeah, with these you do, anything, if you amend the bylaw, then it has to go down to the minutes to be approved.
Well, okay, that's pretty
That's why it
cumbersome.
said schedules, I think, in provincial statutes goes back to executive council.
Could we not create policy under the bylaw around those kind of scheduling and stuff where it's not necessarily a bylaw, but it would be more policy under the bylaw? Which would
That
give
would
us
work.
that flexibility,
Yeah, that would work, I think.
right?
Yeah.
Policies under the bylaw?
Yeah.
Okay,
We've done that before.
I like that idea, and then you could incorporate the different levels.
Could I just ask, Melanie, under 3.11 D, I've seen these highlighted yellow. What's the question mark? Is that to put in litter?
Yeah, that's the title. What's that common
We're
denominator?
debating what the title should be.
Construction material.
Right, okay.
She just didn't have a theme.
Because I've seen some other yellow highlighted.
Junk was the favorite one.
No, I think dumping was good.
Dumping, I like
She'll get to those there, your worship. Just lettering.
Thank you. Your worship, I put dumping top of list. Okay, so moving down through that, if later, if you are looking through the list and something just doesn't sit well within the list, maybe we'll come back to that. Let's skip down to, I'm gonna go down to 3.11 defines the notice. And
Was
it's 3.11, but the numbering's a little bit off, we'll fix that, sorry, your worship and chair, the numbering is a bit off, but you'll notice there's another 3.11 on the next page called notice. The notice definition that came through the enforcement bylaw, so that was a edit that was previously approved. Numbering again continues down to 3.14, Public Works Manager. That definition was updated, meaning the person responsible for the Public Works Department of the city, just to clarify. Going down to Part 4, Administration. This was written in via the Enforcement Amendment Bylaw again. Carrying down property standards, 5.1, 5.2. This doesn't address all more complex recommendations. Again, this is just critical priority recommendations. I know that property standards is a big topic in the zoning and planning and heritage, so I think some departments have more work planned that will give better clarity to property standards. But within this bylaw, very basically 5.2, there's a comment that in a structurally sound condition is not clear enough. The recommendations were given, maintain to the standards within this bylaw, or to use other wording. The original document coming from legal gave the structurally sound wording. Staff don't feel that gives enough clarity. Just gonna write it down.
Shouldn't every building meet the code? Wouldn't that be clear? Like, once they meet the code, if they're not meeting code, they wouldn't be structurally
we
sound.
go with the NBC, National Building Code.
Like, if you tied that in? Because if you're not meeting your national building code, you're probably not, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong.
That works.
We can discuss that maybe, Melanie.
Thank you,
A
offside.
little more clarity, yeah, okay.
thank you.
Guess that's probably extreme too, because my house might have to be demolished if you.
Thank you. Madam Chair, down to 5.3. Again, the reference to the height of the grass with half a foot being the easiest to gauge by. Not only is that time between 6 inches and 8 inches critical, where a crew can go in and do the work, whereas once it hits 8 inches, it's 2 or 3 crews to get through that level of grass. Also, drug paraphernalia that's hidden in the grass, the longer it gets, the more dangerous and hazardous the property becomes. Moving down to section 5.5. The current bylaw references an act that has been repealed. The 2 acts that it may relate to are listed here in the comment section. Environmental Protection Act and/or Material Stewardship and Recycling Regulations of PEI. It's likely it's the material stewardship and recycling because it's not having to do with environment, but it may be both, so that's the question.
That automobile junkyards was put in by Gilbert Clements. Remember that?
Yeah.
Don't you carry it down to what?
Keep going, we'll be here all night. I mean,
Okay.
the highlights, I mean, I've read through this, but.
Okay, so the question remains if anyone looking for clarification on that piece. 5.6, this again, this is a question of perhaps reordering the list. Some items go together, some don't. Yes.
It's a big diamond egg.
And so the rest, I guess a lot, this has been reviewed. Maybe I'll turn it back to you, Chair. Do we just want to ask questions?
I think that would be good, I mean, I know I've read through it, I actually, the one piece that I think a little more clarity, there's a recommendation around Public Works becoming more involved in this. Is the idea that this whole bylaw will fall to Public Works with police support, or is it still staying with police? I just want a clarity on that.
Okay. So Madam Chair, the conversation is that once the committee and council are not directing this bylaw, that an owner will be needed within the city to oversee the work. Fire, policing, bylaw enforcement, they're still leading portions of this work. That doesn't change. The question is, who's the overseer?
Okay, and what's the recommendation?
The recommendation given to me was Public Works.
Sorry, we're too busy.
So they'd oversee this bylaw, but it would be in conjunction with, in collaboration with police. Makes sense, they're going in to do the work.
Working
Do we have
outside
to
the
hire 4 more
silos.
public works?
I know, that's great.
So, now, could I ask just under part 6, subsection 6.1, commented, staff recommend change in vacation if allowed,
What number is that, your worship?
page 29, you see that?
And your worship references he's 6.1. There's the
6.1
word,
and you're commented, BM 10, staff recommend change in vacation if allowed. The following standards shall be applied by the inspector in according repair, vacation. Yes, you're just gonna put property.
well, your worship, it's vacation, it just isn't clear at first reading. We just hope to change that to a standard for repair, vacate, or demolition. So 3 types of orders: repair, vacate property, or demolish. So then that same change, your worship, vacate, so all vacation words would just be changed to vacate or to vacate the property.
Right, okay.
You did a lot of work, Melanie, very good work. So,
Chair, there is a question on the same section, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Yeah,
And where's
there,
that?
this,
What section?
same sections, so we're just gonna go down to 6.1 D,
Okay.
D and E. In reviewing, the CIO identified that there may be a time where there may be work that does need to go to council, and perhaps we should talk about demolition. If we are to put an order to demolish property, do we want to, while the recommendation is that bylaw enforcement retain the ability to submit the order, in order for them to act on a demolition order, does that need to go to council for approval?
If it's a heritage property.
Both, either heritage or other. Heritage, as you said, your worship, heritage does have it written in that it has to go to council. The question is all other properties, do we want to add E, 6.1 E?
It's, to me personally, I see that as no different than cutting the grass as far as if the rule's in place and they're doing their job, do we have to get involved in that piece? Like, is that up to us to determine whether or not a house, that becomes kind of political in my opinion at that point. If there's a process that's being followed and they're doing their job, which is what we're asking, regardless if they're going in to cut grass or whether they're working with property owners on.
If I might, Chair, maybe the difference is there that the expenditure may be put upon the city on rather short notice that wasn't budgeted for.
Okay,
We may have to undertake the actual demolition if we're unable to find contractors, or if we do find contractors to pay them. So maybe that's the requirement to get the approval from mayor and council.
I think when you're talking about heritage properties, and that's part of the tourism factor here in Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island is the heritage presentation. I agree. Are you recommending that it should go back to council? You are.
Your worship, the heritage is written in, and yes, let's keep that. Heritage always goes back to council.
I would agree.
What about properties that aren't heritage?
That's the question.
This is the question.
Properties that are not here, if we have to tear it down.
Yes.
It's on the demolition aspect though. If we decide, okay, now it's 18 months, we need to demolish.
18 months happens, 31 Kirkwood still there? Do they
Yeah.
have to come to council for us to approve? I would say if there is
I
that
think if
money,
you're tearing down
yeah.
someone's house, it'd be great to, I think there should be a response from council.
And plus the money part that will cost to do
You
the
say
demolition.
it should be responsible to council?
Yeah, well, we already did it on University Avenue.
We're still paying for it.
But Chair, it could be another situation where a building is unsafe, not just a vacant building. A tree could have fallen on a building, and might have to be done quickly, that type of thing too. It could be just an unsafe type of situation.
Could that not just come directly to council though, rather than having to come through the committee? I think that was the
I would
big
think, yes.
holdup, right? It's just one of those things that we have to get added to the full council committee. I think that was our big thing that we were trying to avoid every time they had to come to committee, and then they had to get a resolution passed through here, then it had to wait and go to the next council meeting.
6 weeks.
So I think if we could cut that.
So, Madam Chair, to that point, it does say go to committee, then go to council. So your recommendation is straight to council.
That's what I would recommend. Bob, do you have
Yeah,
any?
that's a good idea.
It's already on council's agenda because it was on there at the start of the process.
Correct.
Now we just put it
Now you're just coming and saying it's gonna cost us this much money. Get the committee out of there.
And so if I'm understanding correct, Chair, that heritage remains as is, with exception of move it straight to council. All other properties for demolition
Council.
would go to council.
Do you agree with that?
Yeah, they all go to council, what, the heritage or the vacated property. Look, whether it goes through committee or not, it has to be a vote of council.
Just omit the committee
Thank you.
and get it to council.
Waste another
Right,
month. You know,
and us hearing the same thing 3 times.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, councillors.
You have a special meeting too, your worship.
Sure.
You're good at them.
So are we comfortable with this being housed once we kinda come out of it under the Public Works? Are we comfortable with this following to Public Works Committee?
sure, that's the recommendation.
I think that was the other big one that would have, so,
Yeah.
Well, currently, right now, the cleanup is public
Public
works,
Works.
it's not, so that
That's right.
relationship
It's support.
continues to exist.
exactly. So can I have someone move this on to
Sure.
council? That's who and work can see.
So, again, just to repeat what the chair said, Melanie. The resolution on 31 Kirkwood Drive that has to go to council regarding boarding up the windows and so forth. When this comes into effect, this will be up to the inspector to go out and issue a fine or issue an order that this is what we're gonna do,
Yes, your
correct?
worship.
Okay,
Start the process, 18 months to order, fix it up or
Yeah.
demolish it, right?
Exactly. And your worship and chair, the only final piece is that the inspectors are recommending a different time frame, some flexibility on the timing. That's the only last piece to
not in the
verify.
middle of winter.
You've been council then 2 years, you're gonna be a whole new council in 2 years.
Under chair and
You're
Your
gonna have
worship.
new people.
under section 7, under enforcement standards, they're requesting if a section D could be added, inspector determined, and a section E, which is forthwith in an emergency.
Good. Thank you, and there will be a part 2, because I know we had different discussion on some reinforced ticketing, which will be later on at a different time. Perfect, thank you. So it's moved by Councillor Ramsey, seconded by Councillor Duran, all in favor of this moving on? Everybody, thank you Melanie for great work. Those are 2 big ones that we got through today, that's a lot of information.
Thank you, Melanie.
Police services bylaw, is that the next one? Yeah, is that the same?
That's the same one. I think we're just on the capital budget now.
Okay, it was thank you, okay. Perfect, so, sorry, I'll go back to my agenda, so now the
Good
capital budget report for 2025-2020.
Okay.
No,
Sorry.
we didn't do police
I
services.
did,
That's E.
yeah,
Sorry,
That's
that's my
okay.
mistake.
okay, Melanie, and do you wanna introduce it, Brett, or are you comfortable with Melanie
Yeah,
continuing?
Melanie, you just wanna pick up on it too, go ahead.
Sure.
Okay.
So Chair and councillors, the police services bylaw was amended just to align it with the MGA alone. That was it.
Yeah.
Through our records and information staff here at City Hall.
I can see that. So can I have someone move this on to council? To amend, thank you, Councillor Ramsey, seconded by your worship. All those in favor, everybody is, thank you, good job. That's 3 bylaws that are potentially updated. My goodness, we're hard workers, thank you. All right, so now we are on to the final item, which is the 2025-26 draft capital budget from Chief McConnell.
Thank you, Chair, and I just wanna start off by correcting a keyboard error on my part, on the line that says critical incident command. That should say 25,000 opposed to 200,000.
Oh, phew.
And that will reduce our capital loss this year to 640,000 opposed to 815,000. The first item on the list is portable radios, $85,000 for PIX2 radios. As you know, several years ago, we adopted the PIX2 system, which is essential to maintaining secure and reliable communications. However, that comes with the cost of maintaining and growing with the system. With new officers require new radios, additional vehicles require additional radios. And the nature of our work, the fact that we damage radios each year in the course of our duties, so it takes money to maintain and build upon that capacity. The second item is surveillance equipment, particularly $250,000 to build capacity in addressing, I don't wanna get too technical or too much into the investigative process here, but to allow us to, through judicial authorization, track such things as cell phones and other types of electronic devices. And as the industry has changed, when one time we used to rely on service providers to provide this type of technology, However, as technology evolves, so does the services aligned to it now. So we'll need to adapt to that, and this will, the cost of this type of technology and is kind of front-loaded, so the first year is certainly building the electronic capacity to do that, and then, of course, following years will be licensing costs. The third item is relation to our e-watch program. As in years past, we'd like to allocate $50,000 to expanding and maintaining our e-watch program, which is really popular within our community, and there's parts of the city that have coverage in the system, and this allows us to not be as reliant on partners, but to put installations in areas in the city that may not have a business or a sponsor to provide it. The fourth item is small equipment and less lethal weapon systems. As you can imagine, the variety of types of calls that we go to requires oftentimes small equipment, but more importantly, less lethal weapon systems such as tasers and less lethal weapons like 40 millimeter launchers and less lethal shotguns. The ability to build our capacity, but also have a line item to meet the demands as our environment changes rapidly. So $50,000 as it's in years past, we're asking for that amount. The next item, ballistic equipment, $50,000 for hard and soft body armor to replace these safety devices on our members, and also to buy new ones for additional staff that we have. So bulletproof vest does not have it has a life expectancy, it has a best before date, and this allows us to make sure our officers have the right equipment, but also outfit our new officers. The sixth item is sidearms and replacements. Again, as our staff grows, we will need to outfit our officers with sidearms and our new vehicles, our additional vehicles with carbine rifles, and certainly that is certainly one of our priorities. The seventh item is LiDAR, radar and LiDAR enforcement. Road safety, aggressive driving, speeding is our number one citizen complaint, is where our citizens would like us to do better. These devices will help us do that. And again, this is not just the purchase of new devices, but the updating of old devices and making sure that we have the best chance of holding offenders accountable with accurate speed measurement devices. The eighth item is carbine vehicle mounts and shotgun mounts in our additional vehicles, to make sure that not only do we have the proper mounting for these types of weapons, but they're also they're built with alignment in mind. So not only are they electronically released, but they also have the ability to trigger other devices such as body cams or videos or emergency buttons in vehicles. So if someone releases their carbine rifle, then that triggers a mechanism to alert dispatch, because these things can happen in seconds. And the next item is under critical incident command, $25,000. In addition to the $200,000 we allocated last year and hope to spend by the end of this year to build our critical incident command capacity and our command post. Very critical in times of need, and it also provides us another level of assurance, because this $25,000 will be more allocated in the communications part of the command central. Right now, we have a central dispatch that that dispatches police and fire for our city, but we have little redundancy in that. So this would help us build a little bit of redundancy in that command post to make sure in the event for some reason we had to vacate our emergency dispatch so we could maintain operations in our command post. The next item is under tactical team equipment. As we continue to build our capacity in critical incident response and tactical response, it's imperative that we invest in modern equipment and keep building our capacity within the team, especially in response to high-risk scenarios such as active threats and barricaded persons. It's important that we have the proper breaching equipment, ballistic equipment, and communication to assure officers that are in that isolated situation in that tactical response have every chance of providing a better outcome for everyone involved. And the last item is $25,000 for digital forensic equipment and licensing. I can't tell you the level of impact that technology has had on policing. Keeping pace with it is enormous and a challenge every day. And this provides us a fund to help us deal with the ongoing cybercrime issues, electronic fraud such as seniors fraud, child exploitation, and drug trafficking. These tools are essential to help us deal with that. And as every time there's a cell phone released, every time there's a new vehicle released, it's a challenge to keep pace. So that's in total, Chair, and $640,000, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
A lot of capital in that ask.
No, it's not bad.
No.
You put it together and it's a pretty reasonable ask.
Wait, what are you looking for?
We're all about
You're way
team
up
there.
there, you're on the other
We're all
end.
about team.
Chief's being fiscally prudent. Thanks.
Sure.
Chief, can I just ask under the equipment? That's been switched over to Public Works, right?
That's the fleet and large.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's. So, do you have an estimate this year, what you need, like how many vehicles? Cause in
So
the
I don't
end,
have-
it does come back to your budget.
Yeah, so I don't have the replacement cost, but some of them will be built in, as we recycle our vehicles after a certain amount of mileage, but we will be asking for 2 additional vehicles to help us deal with additional officers and growth.
We just not approved 6?
Yeah, that's 3 years worth of vehicles, so.
Oh, yes, okay.
They need a car to drive when they go to work.
No.
Well, we certainly need to be visible in our community, and that visibility comes with officers being out.
Any other questions?
Madam Chair, if you look at the build-on system for tracking on cell phones. So over the next 3 years, you'll be looking at about 400,000.
Mhm.
And all police forces are being stuck with that bill?
Yeah,
Because
well,
the providers are getting out of it, Bell, TELUS,
Yeah, so
Eastlink.
you're gonna pay one way or the other. You're gonna sign an MOU with another municipality to foot this bill. You're gonna pay one way or the other. I think as Charlottetown, as we are kind of the center of capacity for technology in law enforcement, that we will continue that trend and then invite our partners to kind of cost share that with us as we grow it.
What about our fiber system that Councillor Drawn's working on with water and wastewater? Could we tie into that?
Well, this is.
Begin those discussions?
I don't think you can Google. I don't think you can Google who you're looking for, your worship. I'd say there's a little bit more to it.
Thank you, Chief.
Any other questions for Chief McGonnell on the operational budget?
Pretty good.
Are we good moving this to council
You wanna adjust
or to
those
finance,
numbers?
I'm sorry? Moving it on to finance?
Sure.
Wonderful. That was a long meeting, I don't normally go that long, that was good. I'm wondering if there's any introduction of new business for our next meeting? Is there anything we would like? I know Counselor Twill had 2 questions, you indicated you were gonna get something, so maybe through an email or in report for council, we can update, he was wanting to make sure if our firefighters wanna go to California, that we support that.
They have to be asked.
And then the other question he had was regarding our crossing guard, and I know that that's being handled.
Yeah, that's being him.
Yes,
Anything for the
so,
fire, any questions for the fire chief? Did he have anything?
no,
Okay.
not that, I don't think there was any.
Police chief, yeah. This is the fire chief
Oh,
here.
you got your wage comparisons to the RCP and
Yes,
I
he
think-
wanted that.
I think, speaking to that, I appreciate his inquiry, but I think that's probably better suited for HR to provide those analyses.
Okay.
It's
So
public
then
knowledge.
when I'll follow up with him
Yes.
in council, we can make sure that he knows to put a notice to go through that committee.
Like, is something like that public knowledge? Or is that just more
There's
operational
bans.
HR? You know, I just wondered.
All of this information is publicly accessible through collective
So I can
agreements.
go on there and see what sheriff officer
Move
getting
adjourned.
an RCMP officer. Okay,
Second.
didn't know
Move
that.
to adjourn.
Moved and seconded,
Thank you.
everyone have a wonderful day, thank you.
There's Nancy.